Hi. Have you ever considered investing in a portfolio for stocks or mutual funds but haven't been able to actually come up with enough money to make it worthwhile? You might consider investing in video games. Video games have been around since the 1970s, early 1972, with the first game, Pong, on the Magnavox Odyssey. Competitors like Atari came around and kept them on their toes. Eventually, Nintendo came out with the Nintendo Entertainment System. I've been collecting video games for the last 6 months and have sold many of them for two, three, four times as much as I paid for them on eBay. Somehow, in the last year, video games have jumped dramatically from what they were originally priced at. Back in 1982, the Nintendo company came out with the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was a step up from Atari and Pong, etc. From there, they came out with another system in the late 80s called the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This system has revolutionized the market beyond what any of the other consoles have, though Nintendo has been relatively the most powerful company for a few decades now. As of the last 3 years, they've declined quite a bit due to Microsoft and Sony coming in with the PlayStation and Xbox. The main things that make video games important are the rarity and the condition of them. Video game cartridges, which were common with the Atari through the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, have basically a label, a cartridge, and the connectors that come out of them. The connectors are usually electronic pieces connected to a circuit board that poke out and allow you to connect it to the console. They typically can get dirty, but usually don't take a lot of damage to have to worry about. The cartridge, it's often people write on them or put stickers on them. Things like this will decline the value unless you clean them properly. From there, the label, the most irreplaceable part of a cartridge, can take scratches and damage from being stored. If the label's in perfect condition, video games have ran from hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars if kept in mint condition in their box, original purchase box. To elaborate a little, back when Nintendo came out, games would sell from $20 to $30, which now would be closer to $50 based on what we pay for games. Then the games were bought mostly to be played. Some people had an idea that keeping them new and they would be worth something someday, and some of them have been worth several $1,000s. One of the highest valued games sold new in package was over $26,000. Quite astounding, as the game new was $30, mind you. Back to the conditions, these things can usually keep a game usually keep a game holding its value. Other than that, though, rarity comes into play and is very important, as well as the playability and desirability of the game. Some of the more popular games, the Metroid series, Zelda, Mario, things like that, have been around for a long time and have been record-keeping games as far as popularity. Focusing specifically, Metroid 6 months ago, Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo, was for sale for $20. Somehow, staggeringly, it has tripled in value in the last 6 months. As of last week, it was at $61 on eBay. Another game, this console that followed the Super Nintendo was the Nintendo 64. It is becoming as the Super Nintendo was 5 years ago. They tend to tier in their popularity. Nintendo 64 game GoldenEye, which was based off of the James Bond movie GoldenEye, was for sale for $7 anywhere on eBay 6 months ago and is now selling for $17. The trend is recent and massive. There are alternatives to playing video games. You can rent them to get the idea if they're probably worth keeping or buying or selling or not on GameFly, or renting them from a game store that might sell or rent old video games, such as there's one in Pocahontas in Batesville and in Jonesboro. Actually, the Jonesboro one doesn't rent, but they will sell and buy old Nintendo games. GameFly is probably the only one that's current that will allow you to test a game. That way, you'll know that it's worth buying and holding for the future. It's usually a little expensive, over $40 a month for the most advanced package, but if you like games, then that's a good choice. It's similar to Netflix in its system and operations. More importantly, Super Nintendo is now on the market as the most currently popular system for the collectibles. Typically, the NES about 10 years ago was the most popular. There are still some rare games, but it's just declining. It's kind of like the Magnavox Odyssey. Nobody's really heard of it. Same goes for the Atari. Not many people have heard of it, especially the younger generation. The NES will fade out. Super Nintendo will fade out. The Nintendo 64 is next, and I've stocked up. I've got 3 consoles and about 40 games, mostly of the higher rarity games. These are the things to collect while they're cheap. It's not difficult. There's plenty of copies out there. It's more of a matter of getting to them before the other collectors get to them. There is a problem with making the business out of this. I've been doing this for about 6 months, collecting and flipping them on eBay, just collecting them from game stores, etc. The problem being the fact that there's a finite amount of them. So ultimately, if you're looking to do something better than invest your money in a savings account at 0.03%, 0.3%, collecting and flipping video games is about the equivalent turnover of gold these days. Thanks for listening.